Hey, gamers! Get it? Gamers? Like Squid Gamers and, you know, Squid Game. God, this intro felt so much better in my head. You know what, screw it. We're talking about Squid Game now. We're talking about Squid Game. You read the title. Chances are you know what Squid Game is. It needs no introduction. It's a South Korean drama show about a bunch of poor people who are given the opportunity to compete in a series of children's games in order to win a massive cash prize, with the only downside being that whoever loses the game is killed. Damn bro, sign me up. All of this is told through the eyes of a man who started out as a nobody, but eventually turned into a somebody, Seong Gi-hoon. I love Squid Game. I've loved it since the first time I watched it. And I've kind of been on the biggest Squid Game kick ever since the third season came out recently. I've watched it and the previous two seasons more times than I probably should, and it gave me the motivation to make one big analysis video on all 3 seasons of Squid Game. You know, like my retrospective of Arcane last year, which this video will be sort of a standalone sequel to. The newest installment in my TV show analysis series. I'm not here to be nitpicky or throw out hate just for the sake of it. I'm just here to give my fair opinion on the show and how each season holds up compared to each other. Oh, and just like last time, there will be significant spoilers if you haven't seen Squid Game. So, spoiler warning for the rest of this video. I'm gonna be spoiling a lot. So, without further ado, let's jump into talking about what Squid Game has to offer. Beginning, of course, with Season 1 of Squid Game is really good. It's a masterpiece. I loved it from the very first time I watched it. It pulled me in from the very first episode to the last. It's one of the most compelling and emotionally gripping viewing experiences I've ever had in my life. So this show is centered around a middle-aged man named Gi-hoon, who's living with his elderly mother in South Korea. He's divorced, stuck in a dead-end job, and has recently developed a gambling habit that caused him to get stuck in his current situation of not being able to pay off his debts. But then he's given an opportunity to participate in a series of games with the promise of winning a life-changing sum of cash if he makes it through to the end. He accepts the offer in the hopes of giving himself and his family a better life, and is taken to an undisclosed island where the games take place, along with hundreds of other people from different walks of life who are also drowning in debt. There's everyone from investment bankers, to refugees from the north, to gangsters, to doctors, to even a lively old man stuck with an unfortunate brain tumor. But they all have one thing in common. They're all desperate enough to risk everything for the chance to have a better life. And risk it they do when they find out that whoever loses each game is freaking shot and killed. The first episode showcases the first game, red light, green light, where about half of the players are killed off. And the second episode opens with the remaining contestants voting on whether they should continue the games or not. And in a surprising twist, they do call it off. Everyone gets an out, and yet, after returning to their regular, impoverished lives that they had a chance to fix with that prize money, they all decide it's worth it to keep going, even with the consequences that come if they don't make it out alive. The social commentary in the show is simple, but very effective, depicting the harsh realities of capitalism and socioeconomic inequality. This season highlights the desperation each individual has in terms of facing financial hardship, the illusion of control or choice within oppressive systems, the exploitation of the vulnerable by the rich and powerful, and how far people are willing to go when greed slowly consumes them. The way the poor are treated is devastating. And even though competing in this series of games offers them a better shot at life and to rise above their social status, it nonetheless still exists as something for the wealthy quite literally above them to gawk at and enjoy spinning down upon. The games themselves are really fun. Red light, green light makes for a great first game, when it throws everyone under the rug with how everyone is eliminated. Dalgona was a fun challenge, one me and my family have tried to do ourselves. Tug of War and Glass Bridge were intense, Marbles was very emotional, we'll get to that later. And the special game, where the contestants kill each other off outside the designated games, was unexpected, yet very intense. It truly becomes a survival of the fittest case, and what makes them satisfying is how each game puts the characters in new and different situations, changing the abilities and advantages they have for each specific game. The choice you make at the start of a new game without knowing what said game is about can result in both confusion and a drastically different experience. One game may require physical strength, while another may require resourcefulness and patience. Do you choose to go first or last? Do you partner with someone with brains or someone with brawn? It's interesting to watch unfold, especially when it comes down to how the characters go through each game and adapt to their situations. They aren't already intelligent, flawless people. They have flaws. They have their demons, their liabilities in most of the challenges. They can't rely solely on strength to see them through, so they have to play smart and work together with everyone around them, which is what makes it satisfying when they do get ahead and move on to the next game. And that's what really makes the show work. The characters, the players who are forced to risk it all. Gi-hoon makes for an effective main character because of how well the first episode sets up his relationships with his daughter and mother. And even within playing the games, he realizes how resourceful he is despite not seeming as such when we first met him. Sae-byuk is easily my favorite central supporting character because, let's be real, she deserves so much better. Sang-woo is an interesting character whose actions came from a place of moral ambiguity rather than straightforward villainy. Ali was such a sweet character. It was really sad when he died too. The crazy woman and the criminal gangster make for an entertaining antagonistic duo. And then there's Oh Il-nam, the kindly old man with a brain tumor, wanting to relive and experience the thrill of his childhood games before his death. He was just one big ball of positivity that this game desperately needed. You really get invested in each and every one of these players and their motivations, and how much you want to see them do right by their friends and families. You want all of them to make it in the end, even if you know most of them won't. And nowhere does this become more clear than in episode 6, which I'm stating the obvious here. Everyone has seen this one. It's easily the best and most emotionally devastating episode of this entire season, where the players are told to partner up with each other in the next game, Marbles, which turns out to be a partner against partner challenge, which means we know that some of the main characters that partner together aren't gonna make it out alive. It's so emotional and sad. I almost cried, my sister was in tears. Such a great episode. It showcases perfectly how unforgiving and cruel these games can be, and how far players are willing to go just for the sake of survival and money. If this isn't emotional storytelling, I don't know what is. All of this stuff works really well and makes for such incredibly engaging 9 hours of television. But like everything, it's not without a few minor faults. There's a subplot about this undercover police officer, Hwang Jun-ho, trying to infiltrate the island the games take place in order to find his older brother, In-ho, whom he finds out is the front man of the whole system. And it's mildly okay, but is less interesting than the main plot itself, and overall is just kinda disconnected from everything else. In the end, it ultimately didn't matter since the way they wrap this up is neither satisfying nor conclusive. They just sorta end it. There's also a couple parts in the games themselves that rely a little too heavily on plot conveniences. They shed some light on the organization that runs the games that I feel would have been better left ambiguous. And then there's the twist regarding the old man secretly being the host of the games the entire time. And I kinda see how it could have worked in paper, but in execution felt pretty contrived and honestly kinda stupid. Especially since it undermines the most emotional impact of episode 6 by basically telling us it didn't matter. Also, does Gi-hoon care about his daughter at all? He couldn't have vowed to shut the game system down after going to see her? Really? Better yet, why wasn't that the first thing he did once he won all the prize money? I understand feeling guilty and traumatized, but like, come on, man. None of these ruined my experience by any means, and I still very much loved nearly every second of it. But the way it all concludes definitely could have been better. Before we end this segment, I just wanted to address this post that came from Instagram following the season. It falsely claims that Squid Game was based on a true event that happened back in 1986, where a bunch of people were held hostage in an underground bunker and also forced to play games to survive. Obviously this is clickbait and not actually true, but it sure did spawn a lot of rumors. Even if it is real, which I highly doubt it is, I'm sure the director would have said something. The whole point of the show was always about exploring human nature, about our biggest strengths and weaknesses, our choices of trust or betrayal, and what we're willing to get away with when something as tantalizing as money consumes us and greed causes us to act in irrational ways. It's this type of stuff that makes Squid Game Season 1 such an interesting and compelling watch. It has flaws to be sure, especially in the ending, but it's still an outstanding feat to pull off, and one of the best pieces of television I've seen in such a long time. I mean, aside from Arcane, but that's a completely different show trying to accomplish very different goals. Season 1 of Squid Game gets a 9 out of 10, a really great watch that I highly recommend. Coming right off the heels of Squid Game Season 1, I was a tad bit worried about how Season 2 would turn out, considering how much of a lightning in a bottle experience that previous season was. It was always going to be difficult to recapture the same magic, and I didn't think they would be able to pull it off. Fortunately, I'm happy to say that Season 2 was pretty damn good. No, it doesn't have the same freshness as the first season, and there are some issues here and there in regards to the story beats and the way some of the main characters are handled, but for the most part, it was really good. So this season takes place 3 years after the events of Season 1. Gi-hoon, the last survivor of the previous games, has teamed up with the cop who had been trying to infiltrate the island the games take place in, and together they've been trying to track down the men behind the Squid Game system so they can shut it down forever. After failed attempts in doing so, he ultimately decides to be put back in the contest again, driven by a desire to understand the game's inner workings, protect all the players as best as he can, and somehow stop the deadly competition once and for all. Meanwhile, the rest of his team outside all the chaos try to search for the island he and the rest of the players are trapped on and rescue them. The plot from here on out is basically the same as the first season, with the difference being Gi-hoon has played these games before and knows how to beat them, theoretically speaking. And to be fair, they do a pretty good job at luring you into the familiar, with Red Light Green Light being the only repeat game at the start, and then having the rest of the games following it be completely different. The other big change from last season is that after each game, the contestants are given the chance to vote on whether they should call the games off or continue on to the next one. The problem being that the more players who are killed off each game, the more amount of money is accumulated and added to the remaining contestants, which of course causes tension between the two sides. Naturally, all the usual dramas you'd expect from Squid Game emerge. Short-lived alliances and friendships, brutal fights and deaths, trust and betrayal. Complicating the situation further is the fact that one of the players, aka the frontman, isn't who he says he is, and is secretly working against our hero's goal. It's relatively familiar, with a couple things switched around, but like Season 1, Squid Game manages to do a pretty solid job at showcasing how far people are willing to go when richness becomes their only mindset. And they continue to go all the way and risk killing off more people just for the sake of making money. It was equal parts exciting and surprising. Once again, the biggest highlight of this season are the characters. Gi-hoon himself once again makes for an effective main character because of how much you want to see him accomplish his goal of shutting down the game system, despite the dangerous risks he's willing to go through. But the rest of the central cast is pretty good too. Jung-bae, Gi-hoon's best friend, was nice to see again, since he wasn't that big of a character in Season 1. He only appeared in like one scene in the beginning of Episode 1, and that was about it. Daeho was also a cool character. I love how much he cared for his group, and I like how he and Jung-bae became friends after discovering they both served in the Marines. The mother and son characters were really cute. The pregnant lady Junhee was an interesting character. Hyungju also made for a fun and interesting character. We do see some similar archetypes that we did in Season 1, but I think the new characters added more of a fun, fresh spin to the season. Not saying the Season 1 characters weren't good, but I like that with Season 2's central cast, we get to know more of their backstories, their personalities, their motivations. It makes Season 2 more character-based than Season 1, since that season was more focused on the danger of the games. We never really got to explore that much of the original characters' goals and motivations. As a result, the characters this season become people that you grow to care for and root for, and in general be just as engaging as the old characters from the first season. And I like how most of them form allies with Gi-hoon and become a part of his team. Even with the villain characters, it was kinda neat to see them form their own groups. That's something you didn't see a whole lot of last season. Lee Myung-gi, aka MG Coin, was the only one I thought was just fine. I thought his motivations were clear at the start in terms of trying to get the money, as well as protecting Junhee and her future baby, but then his actions say otherwise, and even more so once we move into the next season. Seriously, I don't get this guy's deal at all. The new antagonistic players like the old man and the shaman lady do a good job at really making you hate them. Thanos is the ultimate meme lord of our modern day culture. And then there was my favorite, the frontman, the most interesting character worth discussing. Much like Oh Il-nam from Season 1, In-ho joins the games disguised as player number 1. But this time, we already know who he is and what his deal is, and as a result, you view this guy in a more grounded perspective than you did in the previous season. Unlike Il-nam, who joined the game solely for his own entertainment, In-ho, or Young Il, which is his fake name, joins the games undercover for the purpose of getting up close to Gi-hoon personally, and understand what his deal is and why he's back. And I really like how he was handled. For the first game, he remains solely as an observer, but after seeing Gi-hoon try to save everyone, he chooses to enter the game so he can interact with Gi-hoon face to face. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding whether or not his actions were honest during his time with the group, or he was putting on one big act all along. For me, I kind of fall somewhere in the middle of this argument. But hey, even if it was one big act, the way they pulled it was very clever. The six-leg pentathlon was his first game with Gi-hoon's group, and he does seem to purposely throw when he tries to spin the top with his right hand and fails twice, only for him to use his left hand the third try and successfully spin the top. Definitely seems intentional on his end, but I think it works because it served as a way to make him feel like part of the team. He goes into everything solely for Gi-hoon, but walks out like a legit contestant, actually helping and looking out for his group. As a result, he feels a lot more human than he was as the frontman, even though we know eventually he's gonna betray Gi-hoon, which he does when Gi-hoon forms a rebellion to stop the game system. A short-lived anti-hero story that I think was done very well. The games themselves are just as fun as intense as they were before. Red Light Green Light was the only repeat game from the previous season, like I said earlier, but they managed to make it just as exciting as it was in Season 1. The editing and cinematography really helped with selling the danger and elevated the sequence a lot. Also, the Fly Me to the Moon remix they used was just so good. Legit one of the best modern renditions of an original song I've ever heard in my life. Up there with the new games are really fun too. The six-leg pentathlon was exciting, being a marathon of a bunch of different children's games that may not have translated as well as standalone games, but were still interesting enough and worth watching. The montages showing each group playing the games was really cool. And then there's Mingle. This was easily my favorite new game of the season, and one of the best games they've ever come up with. Filled with stress, tension, and suspense. Oh my god, I was on edge this entire game. Seeing the players all freak out, desperately trying to find a safe room in time. Young Mi's death was so sad despite barely knowing anything about her. God, it's so good. The other thing I liked about this season was that it was just funnier than the first season. There are a lot of parts that made me laugh way more often than in the first season. I feel like this was the funniest season out of the whole show, more so than its predecessor and successor. It's no wonder why so many memes came from this season. I mean, there's a reason why this image and this line
I've played these games before! I said I played these games before!
Spawned countless internet memes and YouTube shorts. Overall, this season is by no means a bad one, but yeah, it has problems. My biggest criticism with the season was that it was just trying to do too much. Along with the regular games and following Gi-hoon's plight to end it all, we have a subplot about the undercover cop Jun-ho and his team trying to search for the island holding Gi-hoon and the players captive, which ultimately drags the pacing down and doesn't seem to go anywhere in both this and the following season. There's another subplot about a woman soldier who is working to prevent the illegal operation of organ harvesting of the eliminated players, as well as earning enough money to locate her child all the way back in North Korea. And it pops up pretty infrequently that you kind of forget it exists. It felt like this season was trying too hard to balance 3 different plot points all at once, which inevitably causes some of them to be left unresolved. And while the central cast is relatable and fun, it can at times feel like there's a bit too many characters trying to be equally juggled. And then there's the ending, which is the only aspect of the season I genuinely kinda hate. See, Season 2 feels more like a first half of an overarching 2-part narrative that sets up the next big step in the story, rather than feeling like one conclusive piece. It just kinda ends in the middle of Gi-hoon's rebellion in an attempt to shut down the game system. And it's not bad, but it does leave you thinking, what exactly is the point of it all? And also, I just wanted to add that the rebellion was so stupid. I mean, what did Gi-hoon expect to happen? All it led to was Gi-hoon's crew, including his best friend, dying. I should feel sad for him, but the plan was so poorly thought out that I didn't see any chance of it actually working. Honestly, I can't believe it came from the mind of a guy who's experienced this stuff before, and knows exactly the kind of people he's up against. Yeah, this season's flawed for sure, and it doesn't quite live up to the heights of the first season, but as long as you don't go into it with sky-high expectations, I think there's still a lot to get out of this season. It still delivers the same fun and excitement you'd expect, and I'd still say it's worth watching if you haven't already. 8 out of 10. Now it's finally time to jump into the newest installment in the Squid Game series, Season 3. Let's see how it ends.
Oh no!
Yeah, season 3 was underwhelming to say the least. It had me at the start, but then it kind of lost me a little. And then it had me again, and then it kind of lost me again. And then it had me again, and then it kind of lost me again. I don't know why the season felt so conflicting, but as I was watching it, while I didn't think it was outright bad, I couldn't help but feel like something was off about it. Like, a lot of the same issues I took with seasons 1 and 2 became much more apparent here. Things started getting more frustrating and dumb, and overall kinda watered down compared to last season. Okay, let me start by going over the things this season does right. I neglected to mention this in the season 2 segment, but one of its strongest aspects was being a gradual build-up to Gi-hoon's plan to shut the game system down. Plan A was to find the recruiter and have him lead him to their boss, and when that didn't work, Plan B was to enter back into the games and keep as many people alive as possible to stall for time. And when that didn't work and the players became more greed-driven, Plan C was to attack from the inside and form a rebellion to infiltrate the main room to stop the men who ran the games forever. And that didn't work. Gi-hoon has been outsmarted again and again. Now he's figured out, the guards have a much closer eye on him, half of his alliance got wiped out, leaving him outnumbered by the rest of the contestants who want to keep going. He no longer has a plan. He's back where he started, playing for survival. And I think that's something this season did really well, wasting no time getting back into Gi-hoon's story and where he stands currently, now nothing but empty and hopeless. In addition, the games are once again solid. Episode 2's Hide and Seek was easily the best new game of this season. It's reminiscent of the Marbles game back in Season 1 where the challenge is partner against partner. The players are split into 2 groups, unfortunately meaning some of the central cast members will be against each other. It's encouraged to work as a team, so you're guaranteed to make it through to the end, depending on if you have a proper shaped key for each specific keyhole. The set design was very impressive with the endless maze of doors, raising the stakes even higher than ever, helped by there being very little music, and you hear the footsteps of players creeping around, and the sounds of someone screaming and getting killed in the background. This was easily the best episode of the season with the most impactful moments, and I'm kinda mixed on them as a whole, but we'll get to that later. Then there's Jump Rope, which I thought was pretty okay, even though it felt like Glass Bridge from Season 1, but worse. The real tension during this game was that a rogue player began pushing people off the bridge once they got closer to the exit. And it's interesting on paper, but in execution it kinda falls flat because I had no idea who this man was, nor did I care for who was dying. And with that, let's get into my problems. Remember how I said episode 2 had the most impactful moments of the whole season? That's because most of the central cast dies. Like seriously, so many characters get killed off this episode. First there's player 120, Hyung-ju, who dies after getting stabbed and killed by MG Coin. And it hits harder because she went out protecting her group. She saved them from multiple killers, especially while Junhee was in the midst of giving birth to her newborn, and even managed to find the exit. But instead of taking the win herself, she went back to rescue her group. And in doing so, she never made it to the end. Then there's the son character, Young Sik. Before the game, he was being told by his mother that he shouldn't be a killer because he wouldn't be able to kill anyone. And she was right. He went this whole game not killing a single player, and in the end, he went for his mother, Junhee, and her baby, only for his own mother to stab him in the back, literally, and kill him right then and there. These two spent the whole last season always staying by each other's sides, and in the end, it was the son who died in the hands of his own mother. This really broke me, especially in the very next episode, when the mother decides to take her own life, since there's no point in going anymore. And then there's Daeho, who I thought was done pretty dirty. I thought for sure they were going to do more with him this season, because at the end of Season 2, during the rebellion, we were never given a clear explanation as to why he backed out from giving his group the ammo at the last second. But Season 3 starts, and we barely get to see him at all. Nobody talks to him or asks what went wrong. He's just hiding half the time. All we see is Gi-hoon death staring at him from across the room. It's revealed during the game that Daeho never actually served in the Marines. He only said that to fit in with the group, and then that's it. Gi-hoon chokes him out and he just dies. I was disappointed by this because he was such a standout character from last season. Yeah, he may have lied about serving, but his personality and care for the team was genuine. The shaman lady dies as well, and I have nothing to say about her. Just that I'm glad she's gone. And then Junhee fractured her ankle during this game, but managed to make it to jump rope, now with her newborn child. And her death, while emotional, is also kinda meh. There were no stakes leading up to this, and I thought it was obvious that she wouldn't make it through the game due to her injury. And she doesn't even try the game, she just jumps off the edge, and that sucks. Because I genuinely started to care for her this season. Not saying she wasn't good last season, but here it genuinely felt like she wanted to have her baby and ensure she made it out in one piece. But in the end, it cost her life. So many major characters died, and while I was emotionally drained within the moment, I also thought it was way too much and way too rushed that so many major players were killed this early in the game. All the characters you rooted for last season are gone, so who are you looking out for now? All that's left is Gi-hoon, Junhee's baby, who becomes a player in her place, the old man nobody likes, MG Coin, and the shy guy from Thanos' group. With the exception of Gi-hoon and the baby, of course, none of the other characters gave me any reason to like or root for them. And that brings us to the final game, Squid Game. So we see everyone making alliances and bets on who to kill off. Stuff we've already seen done before and better in the past. But this time it feels hollow because it involves nobody interesting. When literally every other character I cared about is dead, what's the point in caring about these people? As a result, the final game didn't feel all that intense. I was only curious about how Gi-hoon was going to protect the baby. And after making it to the end of the game and all the other players are dead, Gi-hoon realizes the button to start the round was never pressed. And in classic protagonist fashion, he chooses to sacrifice himself for the sake of the baby's safety. Now, I do really like this scene. I don't think it would make sense for Gi-hoon to win a second time. It was a powerful moment, especially with his final words being, "We are not horses, we're humans," meaning they're people with real lives and real struggles, not just things to toy around with and expect to go along with their tempting offers. But it still stings because as good as the scene is, it didn't have the full impact it should have had. In the end, the island explodes, every player is dead with the exception of one escapee who managed to make it out with the help of the woman soldier. And the very last scene at the very end implies there being an American Squid Game spinoff. They just relocated the game system like it's nothing. Like, you could argue that's the point since the games happen annually, but again, it lacks all emotion and impact. That's why I can only describe this moment as an overall failure, an ugly sour spot in an otherwise really emotional send-off to our main protagonist. There are other problems with how everything wraps up, like how the undercover cop subplot amounted to nothing in the end, when all he could get out to his brother following the events of the first season is, "Why? Why did you do it?" And then he just swims away once the island blows up. Like, that's it? That was the big payoff? And also, why is Cate Blanchett having the street dude play Dachi in America? Nobody in America knows what Dachi is, especially those outside of Squid Game. All in all, this was such a lame way to end things. It's flawed as hell and kind of a huge disappointment compared to the first two seasons. Once again, I didn't hate it. I don't think it's an absolute betrayal of Squid Game as a whole. It doesn't ruin it or anything. But like I said earlier, I couldn't help but feel underwhelmed by the whole thing. A lot felt wrong here, with weird decisions and a middling finale that left something to be desired. It's not infuriating, but it's not something I'm all that interested in viewing again, at least not for a while. 6 out of 10, it's okay. Now that we've gone through all 3 seasons of Squid Game, how do they hold up? Well, the story gets progressively weaker as it goes along, peaking with the first season's relatively clean narrative with tons of emotional surprises and exciting moments to count, and falling apart with the slightly unsatisfying, boring, poorly written plot points of the third season. Season 1 is still easily the peak of the show, but a lot of that comes from its freshness factor and how wildly new and creative everything felt at the time. Season 2 is a short step behind, and while 3 isn't necessarily bad, it's a significant step down in terms of overall quality. Ultimately, I am interested in what they do next with this franchise moving forward. If they eventually do end up making an American spin-off, I can only hope it's based on American childhood games and not the same stuff we've seen all over again. You can even do prequel seasons about when the frontman was once a player and how he became the main host of the games. Or you can do a season about the old man and what his life was like before the brain tumor. At the end of the day, Squid Game as a whole is great and well worth watching, but its ending really left a bad taste in my mouth, and I wish it ended on a more conclusive note. Still, it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't already. As long as you keep your expectations in check for the finale, I guarantee you'll have a blast with this show, especially with the first 2 seasons. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you for watching.
Everyone! Everybody, you gotta listen close. Now hold! Attention! Friend online! Stay where you are! Stay where you are! I can cover your mouth! Hold! Move steady as you go, and it's not before a red light! Everyone! Said I played these games before! I was here 3 years ago, and I played them all! And every single person who was there with me, they were all killed, everyone! Here's the deal. We're gonna put an end to it all. We're gonna head up that staircase, up to where these masked men run this whole place. Everyone! Everybody, you gotta listen close. Now hold